everybody, to the Freedom Fix podcast. My name is Derek. Today is January 17th, Tuesday. We are almost to Inauguration Day. This is the week. There are 3 days remaining under President Obama. For those of you who are sad, well, sorry that it will be happening in 3 days. It's very close now. And maybe you only have to wait 4 years, more than likely, probably just 4, but we'll see. For those of you who are excited, how exciting is it for you then? 3 days away, and you get to see the back of President Barack Obama's suit as he leaves office. I know there are many people that are quite excited about that. No matter who won this past election, many of them were very excited to see the back of that guy's suit. I don't know. Maybe he'll go on a permanent golf vacation. We'll see. But anyway, starting out today, I'm going to just preface this by saying that today's podcast will be primarily themed with a criminal justice flair and a little bit of an inauguration angle. We're going to look at some of the protests and things that are going on. And also, I just want to touch on a few things in the world of criminal justice. As a very prominent police leader for an organization, a national police organization, has spoken out against President Obama as he is getting ready to let the door hit him in the rear end. So I would like to also start today, rather than doing a dumb leftist comment of the day, I'd like to start out the week with some conservative comments of the day. And I won't just put one. I'll analyze a couple of them here, or maybe a few if I have time. So I'll just start right out with that. This was in a conservative commenter responding to losing the election is the only language that liberals understand. So his comment is in response to someone saying that. He says, these Marxist Democrats understand losing elections, but need not care. Things are always incrementally moving their way, and their time always comes around again. And the way things have progressed since the 1930s, a little more movement is all they need for their time to come around again, but become permanent this time. So I just want to say, there's a great point in that. So much of this incrementalism has led to what we have today. Our reality today is the incrementalism, the end effect of incrementalism from, decades ago. So, if you go hop in a time machine and go back 100 years, you would notice that there are a lot of missing federal agencies somehow all of a sudden. Where is the EPA? Where is, go down the list of all of the federal agencies. Almost all of them were non-existent. I believe there were only 13 of them, even back in, the 1960s. So it's really not that long ago that most of these federal agencies came to be. A lot of it had to do with incrementalism. Regulations, expanding government, it all expanded in a hurry, like the Big Bang. Really, in the span of only 100 years, not even, we've seen this country completely transform. So I think there is a good point that commenter had, because while the number of Democrat and Republican presidents has probably been roughly even, I'd have to go look at the history books to see exactly what number of years Democrats have been in power versus Republicans for the last 100 years. But, I'm guessing, let's just say it's roughly even. Democrats have been getting their way over the past 100 years. Even though it's been even, the end result is a lot closer to, a Democrat's view of, their ideological view than it is from a conservatives. That's for sure. All that's happened to conservatives is they've been the brakes and have slowed down the fundamental transformation of this country. But The brakes weren't working very well the past 8 years, and really they've only worked, so for the last 100. They've gotten in the way of a little bit, but I mean, we have turned into a completely different country, and that incrementalism is exactly spot on. So next up, this has to do with the intelligence and IQ disparities by race and country and whatnot. This commenter says, our DNA does not allow us to be equal in every way. It just can't happen, no matter how hard the lefties try or how badly they want it to be. Again, I think this is one of those topics where scientists are kind of boxed out. I mean, I think there's been a lot of data that suggests that IQ varies by race, certainly by country, but I think they get kind of pushed out in the scientific, science community. Similar to anybody who is not a full-blown alarmist when it comes to global warming. Scientists who believe there's climate change happening, but are not quite so fast to just say it's, the apocalypse is coming and it's 100% man-caused. I mean, there are plenty of those scientists out there in the community who are just being, shunned. I mean, they're being thrown out. Their jobs are being, eliminated. There's no room for them in the scientific community. And the same thing happened with a very well-known doctor in the scientific community on the subject, relating to his research on IQ disparities by race. I'm trying to remember his name, but I just think there's a lot of room for discussion still on IQ disparities by race. A lot of the evidence out there suggests that it's not quite so, even down the middle. I mean, and I'm not just saying a black and white thing. I'm saying even, white or European American versus like Asians. There's a lot of evidence that suggests Asians are higher in IQ across the board on average than European Americans, which, lines right up with how they're doing economically speaking. I mean, they're the most privileged group. You won't ever hear people complain about it because they're not white, but they are the most privileged group in America, and also, statistically speaking, the most intelligent group. That is Asian Americans. So, I think there is a lot of disparity there when it comes to intelligence, and, there is no such thing as true equality because nobody has the same cards and nobody is born equally into equal circumstances. All you can do is give everybody equal opportunity, and that's really the most you can morally request of a country, to give everybody equal opportunity. So, even if you dismiss DNA-based IQ, the results still show that IQs vary significantly, no matter the causation. People simply don't have the same level of intelligence at birth. We're not all equal. And it's not just DNA. I mean, behavior doesn't balance out either. I mean, you can look at, for example, pregnancies of black women that are unplanned. While 70% of births to white mothers between 2006 and 10 were intended, half of births to black mothers were. I mean, that's a very huge disparity in behavior. Now, you can say there's a bajillion different reasons for that, and I'm sure there are, but the behavior is not equal, but everybody wants to legislate as if everything is equal, as if behavior is even equal and should be, if you have good choices or you have bad choices, you should have the same outcome. That's just not right. It's not moral to even try and get into that kind of gray area. So these trends continue into adulthood when it comes to obesity, and I'm talking about the trends of childhood obesity. I misspoke there, missed one little segment. But yeah, so childhood obesity varies significantly with black children and white children. Between the ages of 2 and 5, white children only have, I believe it's like 2.5% are obese. And in the black community, black children, same age group, 2 to 5, 11% of them are obese. Now, you can tell me whatever you want as far as the causation of that, but to sit and treat those two things as equal, I'm not talking about treating the people in an unfair or unequal manner. I'm talking about just pure behavior. Behavior is not equal across all races. It's not equal across all countries. To try to draw these equivalencies is kind of, it's anti-fact, and it's just in a utopian world to try and sit and say that everybody's equal, even though clearly stats and certain things and many things, almost everything really, there's disparities. So that obesity problem doesn't just happen in childhood. It actually changes, or it actually continues well into adulthood. So, the lifespan of African Americans is actually 5 years shorter than whites. And in a world where, we're living longer than ever, 5 years off your life, that's a pretty significant chunk of time to just lose off your life simply for being of a different race. But, science and DNA doesn't give a damn about what you think, or if that's like, that's a little insensitive to, my race. No, it doesn't matter. It's science. Maybe there's some things we can learn from finding out these disparities. Maybe we can actually do something about it rather than live blindfolded, acting so sensitive about, that one race is better than the other. No, I'm not even trying to suggest that. I'm just saying you have to at least acknowledge reality before you can start making, taking the steps necessary to make tomorrow better. And aside from health, there are plenty of other disparities too. And it's not just black and white. You can go to all races and genders and demographics. They all have varying tendencies in behavior. How about NFL athletes, world chess champions, marathon runners, high jump winners? You can go down the line. Genetics play a huge role, and calling everyone equal by default is ignorant to science and the results we all see with our own eyes. That's not to dismiss our right to be given equal opportunity, but that's a very different argument to make. So, great comment there, saying that our DNA doesn't allow us to be equal in every way. I don't know why it's so controversial, but we live in polarized times, and everybody puts themselves in one little box, and anything that affects that box in a negative way, or provides information that the people within that box don't want to hear, whoever's presenting that information needs to be shut the hell up. And in the case of a very prominent professor, doctor I should say, he was basically probably 30 plus years of work just down the drain because people didn't like what he had to say, even though it was based on science. And so science is always a cover when it's what the leftist agenda wants, but when it's anybody saying contrary to whatever the narrative is on the left, which is always evolving, that person is going to be shut the hell up and probably going to be out of a job. I'll do one more. This was in reference to collectivism and spreading the wealth. Commenter says, quote, "At its core, it's institutionalization of envy. Once upon a time, children were taught from an early age that it was wrong to take what someone else had just because you wanted it. Today, that lesson has been forgotten," unquote. Well, absolutely. Say that 5 times. Institutionalization of envy. That describes collectivism perfectly. People want what others have. That's the whole argument for income inequality. people, they've done polls or studies that show that even if people were to, let's just put people in two blocks or in two buckets. You've got the poor and you've got the rich. People in the rich bucket, let's just say they make all over, let's say they all make over $1 million a year. And the people in the poor bucket on average only make $20,000 a year. People in that poor bucket are less likely to care about having their overall pay increase as long as the gap narrows. So they'd rather have people that are proponents of fixing the income inequality, or in other words, socialism. They would rather everybody make less, even if this isn't what they're saying. They would be okay with it as long as the rich or the elite made significantly less. So what would they prefer if maybe instead of everybody making $20,000, everyone would make $50,000, but the rich make $3 million now? They would still view that gap, that income inequality, as being a problem, even though they were doing 2.5 times as good as they were. So it's really about the inequality. It's more the envy side of it that they care about. So as long as there's a gap, they're going to complain and they're going to be asking for justice. You can bet on that. Anytime any group has a grievance that has to do with equality, you can bet everything you own that group will never, ever, ever shut up about it. They will forever be you will forever be in debt to them. And even if you're not the one who's required to pay off that debt, you're still going to be listening to them complain, for whoever it is that is going to be paying it off. These groups are designed to have, they're immortal. I mean, the civil rights movement is not what it was. Feminism isn't what it was. Look at what feminism's turned into. Look at what Black Lives Matter has turned into. Do the feminists of today resemble even mildly, even slightly what, first generation feminism was fighting for? They were fighting for the right to vote. They were fighting for the right of women to be treated equally. Today, it is far different. They are far more radical. And they have already achieved equality. Schools are graduating women at a significantly higher rate than men now. Women under 30 are doing significantly better as far as pay in almost every major city by at least 7% higher wages. I mean, there's a lot of things that have happened that, woohoo for feminism. I mean, it really did, get women their equality that they were looking for. But, present day feminism, it's not what it's about. And the same with Black Lives Matter. It's a far more radical movement. It has nothing to do with what Martin Luther King was preaching. So, I just want to digress a little bit from that, but just say, income inequality is another movement. And the revolutionaries, the Castros of the world are always going to be trying to rise to power to impoverish the whole country, whatever country that is. And I don't want that to ever happen in America, but there are people who really, really, really want that to happen here. And it's antithetical to America's foundation, really. I mean, none of this stuff has anything to do with what America was founded on, but, that's not going to stop people from trying to fundamentally transform this country. So, moving on, I just want to get to some criminal justice news. This has to do with the director or executive director of the National Association of Police Organizations. The gentleman's name is William Johnson. He recently just spoke out against President Obama. He says, quote, "No one will be sorry to see him go," unquote. Obviously referring to the President Obama. And Johnson continued, he said, quote, "He knows what he's doing. He's aware who his audience is. In terms of violence against police, his audience was not police or survivors. His audience was the leaders of Black Lives Matter, protesters, and agitators. He sent a clear message. I'm on your side." From statements such as comparing Trayvon to his son, to quickly rushing to judgment with the Ferguson issue, instantly attributing it to systemic racism, to the eulogy in Dallas for the slain police officers at the hands of a radical Black Lives Matter member, to less violent police encounters, such as the black Harvard professor in 2009, President Obama has taken very hardline stances against police in all of the above encounters. And those are just a few of the encounters. There's a reason you never see the thin blue line bumper stickers on a liberal's car. There's a reason the majority of police are very upset about the way they've been demonized over the last 8 years. Here's a quote from President Obama after Ferguson. He said, quote, "Too many young men of color feel targeted by law enforcement, guilty of walking while black, driving while black, judged by stereotypes that fuel fear and resentment and hopelessness," unquote. Yeah, except for that Ferguson had nothing to do with any of that nonsense. This is what happens when feelings, emotions, and narratives commandeer the common sense train. Does it matter that the grand jury cleared the officer of wrongdoing in Ferguson, as well as proved that the hands up, don't shoot narrative was completely false? Did we ever get a redacted statement from the president? Of course not. He's been openly hostile to law enforcement in this country. These cases only serve as opportunities for him to release his true feelings to the public. If he spoke this way without evidence or without a big CNN story spinning up, ginning up all of these false narratives, he would seem like a radical. So when he's talking before there's ever any facts on the ground, like all we know is that, the kid got killed by the officer. All we know is that. We don't even, investigators haven't even gotten, the eyewitness accounts yet. They haven't even got to square two of the investigation. And we have the president of the United States saying, walking while black, driving while black, too many young people of color feel targeted. He's already associating this case, because he's speaking about this case. He's associating it with, racist targeting. When the president of the United States is suggesting that the police are out to get you, such as in the case of Ferguson, you're going to have a response. That's called ginning up a bunch of, rage and agitators and really trying to cause, an uprising. That's by design. Are you kidding? There's no other way to interpret that. Especially when you know that only weeks later, all you had to do is wait a little bit and you'd find out that it had nothing to do with race, per the grand jury clearing the officer of wrongdoing. Not only didn't have anything to do with race, he was in the right to shoot the guy. So, Johnson continued. He spoke on Fox News and he said that Obama had been stoking the flames by disarming of police, taking away defensive gear like bulletproof vests and helmets and bulletproof cars, and at the same time appeasing very violent movements. So during the Dallas, I want to talk about the Dallas memorial service for a minute. President Obama took a huge chunk of time to rant about how blacks are unfairly targeted by police. Now keep in mind, he was speaking in front of the widows of slain police officers who had just died in the past 48 hours or less. Slain police officers whose lives were cut short at the hands of a truly racist murderer. the Dallas Memorial speech was the last straw. He no longer gets the benefit of the doubt. He concretely cemented in place his anti-police stance on that day. Many would argue it happened long before that, but I don't know how you can even deny it after that day. Just listen to his words. Anyone who believes otherwise is a fool. In fact, the speech told us a lot more about his stance on race in general, too. Listen to this. President Obama said, quote, "Although most of us do our best to guard against it and teach our children better, none of us is entirely innocent," unquote. The key part in this sentence exposes how he really feels. He says, none of us. Okay, so think about that for 1 second. He said, none of us. This is a classic case of just smearing everybody so that nobody is free of sin, which conservatives are very used to this concept. You know, we tend to believe in God and that we're all sinners. But it politically, it's a very, you know, I don't know, what's the word? It's kind of a low blow. It's kind of a childish move. It's like you must be guilty because I said everybody's guilty of racism. The charge here is racism, not just sin, like we're all sinners. I get that. You can sin in any number of ways that aren't illegal. You can sin in any number of ways that by rule of law, you know, there's nothing we can do about it. But he's claiming that everybody is racist. He says none of us is entirely innocent. He's talking on the subject of racism. Sorry, until I've done something that is overtly and explicitly racist, stop calling me a racist. You don't get to just say that about the American people. That's insulting. This means that no matter how well you raise your kids, you somehow allowed racism to infect their personal views. No matter what, we are racist. The left often refers to this as implicit bias. In other words, we're all unconsciously racist to some degree, and conveniently, leftists have all of the solutions to solve that problem. Affirmative action, sanctimonious lectures, political correctness, victim group hierarchies, you know, like First Amendment modifications, double standards, you know, all that fun stuff. So you're racist, and let me tell you why I'm better than you, because I acknowledge that there's racism. So this like holier than thou, you know, attitude, it's just people are tired of it, and I just wanted to bring up this story because clearly the police across the United States have been kind of pushing back, and you know, someone who has a strong voice in that community, the executive director of the National Association of Police Organizations, you know, he's got a good idea of what's going on in the police force, and I'm telling you, they are not fond of this guy, and they do not mind seeing him go take a hike for a while. Well, forever. I mean, he's never going to be in office again, so we'll see. I'm not saying President Trump is going to be anything spectacular, but it looks like he's going to side with police officers, law and order, and you know, he's going to be a lot more tolerant of them at the very least. Next up, I want to talk a little bit about what's going on here in D.C. There is a lot of rumblings beneath the surface for protests that are going to be taking place during Friday's events. And they are not just your routine, run-of-the-mill, you know, protests where Soros pays a bunch of people to show up with signs. This stuff is getting pretty hostile. So there's a ball, I think they're calling it the Deploraball, but it's just an inauguration ball that's taking place in D.C. And there's a group that has been trying to shut these events down. I know there's a lot of things going right now, trending, like Disrupt J20, January 20th, they're referring to. And there's a whole web of agitators, you know, involved in all of those events. But one of the things is a let me just clarify. I was going to refer to conservative activist James O'Keefe, who exposed yet another kind of like sting operation where he exposed a radical leftist group in one of their planned, I'll call it an attack, but that's planned for this week. So basically he found out that people are trying to not just intervene or interfere or shut down a little bit like these events. They're trying to go like straight up like terrorist style. Like we're talking about throwing forms of acid in the air ducts and trying to smoke everybody out of the building, possibly causing harm to people. I mean, they're talking about actually causing harm and endangering lives. They're talking about burning down people's homes if they won't listen. They're talking about very, very illegal stuff here. That's outrageous. I mean, this is not something you ever hear about on the conservative side of the fence. You generally don't even hear about it on the leftist side of the fence when you're talking about the core group of lefties across the country. But this is the radical side. Obviously, I'm not trying to say every leftist is similar to these people, but I do believe it is worth pointing these people out, because I promise you lefties will have no problem pointing out the radical right-wingers who are out there. So let's just do them a favor to expose some of the people on their side of the fence. And, this is one of those. I believe it was, I'm trying to think of the organization. It's the DCAFC organization, whatever that acronym stands for. I think it has to do something with fascism or something. I don't know. But it's a far lefty organization. And this has been brought up to the FBI. And, some of these people could face 5 years in prison for plotting to shut down events with basically, forms of terrorism, trying to inflict chaos. So there's like videos undercover of them doing recon on the facilities where these events will be taking place on Friday. They were talking about how they have a minimal chance of getting caught, which is funny because they did get caught. But planning on like smoke bombing people and an acid stink bomb. They're trying to shut these events entirely down, and it doesn't stop there. This is just one group, and you've got very major people that are basically advocating this stuff. Michael Moore, you've got him very, very vocally saying, calling on people to disrupt the inauguration. You've got other groups who have planned protest marches. They've planned, which is, I don't mind marches, but the intent behind them is not necessarily so innocent. They're trying to stop Secret Service checkpoints, or at least harass the checkpoints, people around the checkpoints, which presents security holes that could be exploited by people who want to cause serious harm to the president. And based on these stories popping up, it looks like there really are some people who seriously would want to do some harm to the president. I don't know that anything warrants this kind of treatment, and I understand you may not politically like him, you might hate him. For all I care, it doesn't really matter. We can't have this kind of stuff happening when we're America. I mean, this is America. This is not how we go about things. There is there is room for protests, peaceful protests, for civil justice and civil rights, but I don't know where violence and chaos ever has caused an increase in freedom. I don't know where anything positive can come from this. And it's really just going to create a bigger rift in the country that is, already quite wide. Let's see what else we've got going on. I had a few other stories I wanted to touch on. Also, it's worth noting the protest on, or I don't know if it's just a walk or a march. It might not be a protest, but they're pretty much the same thing. On Saturday, the day after the inauguration, there's the Women's March. And I already talked previously about how white women were not so welcome because they're too privileged. If you're white, they're welcome, but basically just shut up and let us do the talking. So there's some more people who've been disinvited, and those it's one group in particular. I don't remember the name of the group, but basically it's feminists who are pro-life. So pro-life feminists, whatever group that was, the Women's March has said, sorry, you are not invited, bye-bye. So they're all about women's rights. As long as you're a woman who agrees with everything of the leftist agenda. So I mean, it's not shocking. There's absolutely zero tolerance. There's zero tolerance on that side, at least that far side. And this isn't Trump supporters here. These are women who probably don't like Trump, but they're being disinvited because other women are intolerant of them having a different view on something like life. And if it's their choice, if they believe in choice, then they should be cool with a group who shares probably a lot of their same, values, but they just deviate on one specific value and they prefer, life. And that's a shame. I mean, I don't know. What do you do? So, speaking of being pushed aside, there's a whole lot of things going on in Hollywood. Actresses and actors, I think they're just all actors now. We're in PC times, whatever. Actors in Hollywood are being blacklisted, and apparently it's been happening for years, but it's becoming a lot more visible now. They're being blacklisted for being conservative. So, if you happen to fall on the conservative side of the fence, you are not finding work. You've got a lot of this popping up with people who are trying to perform at the inauguration, who are being bullied into, putting their performance on I won't even say putting it on the back burner. Like, basically they're just saying, don't go, or you're not going to have a career anymore. And that's a shame, because people should be able to put patriotism over whatever flag they wave, whether it's the rainbow flag or the feminism flag or the whatever flag. Like, if whatever it is you feel that the president is so horrible, in respecting it, you can't put that flag above the American flag. And that's a big shame, because many right-wingers still wave that flag proud. Even though they disagreed with President Obama, they still wave that flag proud, and the country comes first. But you don't see that. You will not see that in Hollywood. There's too many boycott threats, death threats, slurs, just going on over there. And let's see here. Oh, also, I wanted to say that the president, do we remember, and not just the president, but John Kerry, you may recall with Iran, when the sailors were captured or kidnapped, really, at sea, and we looked like we were humiliated on a global billboard, essentially. Now Iran has literally put the sailors up on a billboard, and it's just humiliating, that we are America and we have U.S. sailors on their knees with a Iranian flag waving as a ship, speeds up to kidnap them. I mean, this is the country that we are doing deals with. This is the country that we have basically kowtowed to. I mean, it's unreal. It's sickening. It's disgraceful what we have become on the world scale. We have absolutely no strength. Like, we look weak as heck. We look so weak. Whether it's in the South China Sea, whether it's in Iran, whether it's in the Middle East with Russia and everybody, whether it's North Korea, we have absolutely, we're like the beta males of the world right now. And that happened for a reason. You know, that didn't just come to be. Our depiction is very much, planned. It's the result of our interactions with the world. And there are many things we could do to make sure that Iran doesn't ever think that they can do this kind of stuff. And I'm talking not just about putting a billboard up, but I'm talking about taking our sailors to begin with. Like, how about sink their ship? Let them be the ones that have to play, the ball will be in their court. And I promise you, if they know that they are completely overwhelmed with power, they are not going to retaliate. They're going to be like, okay, yeah, maybe we won't mess with them. And the same with China, the same with North Korea, the same with Russia, the same with everywhere. We look weak everywhere because we've had a pacifistic leader for the last 8 straight years. It's kind of like, I want to do enough war, just enough war, and then we'll get out. Well, that sounds great, but you need to have a presence. You need to be strong. Whether or not you want to be completely pacifistic or completely a warmonger, I get it, but there's a balance there. But you can't just sit here and play this like, the nerd that's on the playground who's being bullied. You cannot just sit back and let him kick you in the balls. Like, you got to go kick them in the balls. You got to do a little bit on the offense. You got to at least have a presence. I mean, there's a lot more to it than just, stopping the war. Well, yeah, but if you stop doing things, other people start doing things. That's how ISIS came to be. That's how Russia started flexing. That's how all of a sudden islands started popping up in the South China Sea, impacting trade with all of that area of the world. I mean, there is so much more to it than just getting out of it, getting out of war and lowering and decreasing the military spending. And, we've absolutely turned our Navy into a preschool in a bathtub version of a naval force. I mean, we really do need to have a strong military, even if we're not completely using it, but it needs to be strong. It needs to be strong because the world needs it to be strong. When we're not strong, all of a sudden things start going crazy all over the world, and that's what we've been seeing. So just take this as one more indicator that things were not so great under the previous president. We have our sailors up on a billboard in Iran, basically just propaganda to show all of Iran that America is just a bunch of, wusses. And we can't have that. Having Iran flaunt their power over the United States. Come on. Get real. This should not be happening. So, one more thing. The DOJ, this is on the subject of criminal justice still. The DOJ has come out and said that the Chicago Police Department is racist, basically. And there's a big problem report that they have come up with because they use the phrase, quote, pattern or practice, unquote, to determine whether or not something has been considered racist. But they don't even have a definition of what they're using this pattern of or practice. So what number of events are required to consider something racist? systemically racist within the organization. And they don't even have a specific number, meaning they get to create the number themselves, and then they can tell you how racist it is. Now, how do you determine this when all of these police officers are primarily in minority neighborhoods? We're talking about Chicago. We're talking about a place that has more murders than pretty much Iraq. What do you do? How do you determine that? Well, how convenient that you get to make the rules, you get to determine it. So I just want to refute that by just saying that there is no way to quantify, where the line in the sand is for what's racism versus what's just routine things happening in horrible neighborhoods. Well, that is all I've got time for today. This is an especially long episode. Kind of rambled on a bit, but I will be back tomorrow, and tune in. We are getting close to the end. And I don't mean the end of times, but for all we know, that might be the case as well. This is the Freedom Fix Podcast. My name is Derek. As always, enjoy your freedom, folks.